And that's gonna keep him away. Make sure he's.
Wait, but I want to.
He just had 2 cups of coffee, so he's good.
What did you just say?
Finally not.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. That was good. Today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about chocolate, okay? Can you imagine a world without chocolate? I honestly can't, okay? Without chocolate, we would not have German chocolate cake. We would not have hot chocolate. We would not have a Hershey's candy bar, okay? Fun fact, German chocolate cake is not from Germany. It was an employee from the Baker's Chocolate Company, Samuel German. He created a bar for them, and in honor of that, they named this cake after him, okay? This is from Medrich and Hatfield. Through my knowledge of working with chocolate over the past 14 years and eating it for the past 30-something years, I can tell you a little bit about chocolate, but with the help of some other experts, some books, magazines, I'm going to tell you a little bit more of the unknown facts about chocolate. I will be focusing on where it comes from, how it is made, and the history behind it. Let's get started. Chocolate doesn't technically grow on trees, but it's close, okay? These are called cacao trees. The cacao trees hold these pods, which contains the cocoa beans. The cacao trees grow in tropical environments under the shade of canopy trees, okay? They grow best at 20 degrees north or south of the equator. So the best popular spots are going to be South America, West Africa. We're looking at like Ghana, Ecuador, Brazil. Those are going to be the high population of these trees. Florida and Hawaii are the only 2 states in the U.S. that can grow these trees, okay? Florida does not grow them commercially because of our hurricanes, the cold weather snaps. These trees are very fragile, so the cold or the hurricanes will kill these. Hawaii does produce them commercially, but it's at a high value cost because of the limited quantity that they make. Tampa is at about 27 degrees north of the equator. Miami is about 25. Hawaii is right in that prime zone of 19 to 21. So they have a better environment than what we do. It takes a whole year's crop, approximately 20 to 30 pods, from one tree to make 450 grams or about 1 pound of chocolate. So what you're seeing on essentially this tree, this will make 1 pound of chocolate in 1 year. Now that we understand where it's grown, let's discuss how it's made. The cacao tree, again, we talked about the pods. Inside the pods is going to be the cocoa beans. They are surrounded by that white pulp, which has kind of like a sweet taste to it. The beans must be harvested by hand and then laid out to dry, usually using some banana leaves. The beans are spread out on the platforms to dry. According to Shaked, cocoa beans are best dried by nature's best drying ingredient, the sun. So there are commercial dryers and blowers and fans that do it, but leaving them out in the sun is the best method. Workers must turn and mix the beans during this process. It takes 3 to 10 days for them to dry out. So they're out there with the rakes, and they're turning and they're moving around, waiting for them to dry out. Once they dry out, this is essentially all done by hand up until this point. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about the machines. The beans must be roasted first. Okay, then they're done in ovens. Then they are winnowed. So winnowing is essentially breaking the shell, and as it breaks the shell, it blows out a little bit of air that separates the shell from what's inside is the nibs, okay, the cocoa nibs. Then the nibs will go through a grinding process. through the rollers, and as it's grinding, it starts kind of heating it up with friction, and it starts melting the chocolate. Once the chocolate's melted, it can go through a hydraulic press, which is going to separate the cocoa butter from the chocolate liqueur. The manufacturing of chocolate is a precise and specific process, and yet it still holds some of this magical inspiration. And this is by Choco Dusk. At this point, chocolate's still in its bitter form, so we have to put in some additives. So this is where you're going to get some more of that sugar and the flavoring. It's very healthy, the 100% chocolate, but again, it's not as appealing. So conching, which is this process with this next roller, is going to make it a more smoother consistency chocolate. If you don't do the conching, it's going to be kind of grainy. After that, we get into tempering and actually making it into chocolate bar. So who came up with the idea to eat this stuff? Okay. First found in Olmec and Mayan and Aztec civilizations. They observed monkeys eating the pulp from the pods. So they're like, oh, okay, if the monkeys are eating it, let us try it. So they went ahead, started eating the pulp and leaving the beans out. Eventually they discovered, oh, if we leave the beans out, they dry, we can start eating the beans. They used the cocoa beans to create a cold, unsweetened, spicy chocolate beverage. They called this drink chocolata. All right, I will have some for you guys to try in a little bit. The Aztecs, ruled by Montezuma at the time, came across cocoa beans as trade. They were using them as currency. You could buy a tamale with one cocoa bean. You could buy a hen for about 100 cocoa beans. Okay, they were using this as money. The Aztecs used both trade and war to access cocoa. Basically, they were wanting it so much that they would go to war over it. If some country is not trading with them, they are going to essentially go to war and say, hey, I want to take your cocoa beans. The chocolate drink, chocolata, was brought to Europe by Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez. He went to Mexico looking for gold and silver, came across the Aztecs, and they said, well, this is our prized possession, cocoa beans. So he took them all, brought them back over to Europe. The royal family did not like the drink. They thought it was bitter and nasty and said, no, this is garbage. Give all your beans to the monks in the church. So that's what they did. Gave it to the church. Well, the church is like, well, after a couple years, we're going to develop this into a better tasting drink. So they started adding the vanilla, the honey, the sugars, and created a more pleasant drink that was, because the sugar, expensive, was only available to the wealthy and the church. It wasn't until France began to industrialize chocolate with the machines that enabled it to be available to the general public. So what has happened since? So about 1828, Johannes van Houten separated cocoa butter from the cocoa beans. So this is that hydraulic press. In 1847, Joseph Fry and Son made solid chocolate. In 1849, John Cadbury introduced chocolate candy bar. You guys know Cadbury, Cadbury eggs, Cadbury bunny. That's Cadbury back in 1849. 1875 milk chocolate was invented by Henry Nestle and Daniel Peter. You guys know Nestle. In 1879, Rudolf Lindt created a bar that snaps and melts on the tongue. So that snaps, that's when we're talking about tempering of chocolate. Lindt bar, you can still get Lindt chocolates. They're at a higher end cost too. 1900, Milton S. Hershey invented Hershey's milk chocolate bar. Some categories of chocolate. So cocoa powder is chocolate liqueur that has a majority of the cocoa butter pressed out. Our unsweetened chocolate is that, 100% chocolate, no additives. Bittersweet, so you're at 70 to 99% chocolate plus some sugar and flavors. Semi-sweet, 35 to 70. Milk chocolate, We have a US minimum at 10% and then a Europe minimum at 25%. They have a higher standard than we do for our milk chocolate. White chocolate has to contain 20% cocoa butter. Okay? In order to be classified as white chocolate, it's got to contain at least 20% cocoa butter. So they say, is white chocolate actually chocolate? Well, it comes from cocoa beans in the cacao tree, but because it doesn't contain any chocolate liqueur, it's not legally classified as chocolate. By trade laws, if you're saying you're selling a bittersweet chocolate at 70%, it better have 70% chocolate. You can't sell somebody 35% chocolate claiming that it's 70. It's false economy, false advertising. You can get into trouble for that. Conclusion. I hope you have gained some new appreciation of chocolate and learned it's more than something that just tastes good. We have talked about where it comes from, the history of chocolate, and how it is made. So next time you taste that sweet or bitter chocolate, you can truly immerse yourself in knowing the road it traveled to satisfy you. Enjoy.